Great. Cool. Hi, everyone. My name is Steffi Paepcke. I'm a senior UX designer here. I work on the robotics side of the world. And I don't want to leave you hanging. I'm going to tell you how I got here as well. I started by studying psychology at UC Santa Cruz. And after that, I kind of didn't really know what to do. I thought about being a therapist. That had been sort of my goal for a long time. And I wound up at Willow Garage as a research assistant. Ooh, someone's heard of Willow?
Yes!
Yeah, cool! Willow Garage, for those of you who don't know, is a now defunct, privately funded research company. We did all kinds of really exciting work. The PR2 robot, we made turtle bots, we made what now is beam telepresence robots, and we did a lot of the maintenance, the primary maintenance on ROS, Robot Operating System. And it was at Willow Garage, it was really a pivotal position for me, is where I realized that I can combine my interest in humans and how they think and feel and interact with other people and objects. I could combine that with technology, and in this case, robotics. And that was a really big sort of turning point for me, where I kind of found robotics as the field that I wanted to work in. I realized also that I needed more training, so I went to Carnegie Mellon and received a master's in human-computer interaction. And then after that, I came back to the Bay Area where I grew up and co-founded Open Source Robotics Foundation, which is now just called Open Robotics. And they are now the primary maintainers of ROS and Gazebo, which is a physics-based robot simulator. One of the biggest projects OSRF worked on was the DARPA Robotics Challenge, which was a little while ago now, but it was a very impressive program put on by DARPA where teams competed in search and rescue tasks with an Atlas humanoid robot or with a robot that they had built themselves. And the program manager of that project was Gil Pratt, who is the TRI CEO now. So I ended up here and have been working on really exciting robots since arriving about 3 years ago. So I'm part of the UX team. We have user experience researchers, designers, and industrial designers. And our main goal is to help TRI figure out what sorts of robotic capabilities to make to improve the quality of life for an aging population. So you've probably heard that the population is aging relatively quickly. In the world right now, approximately 8% of the population is 65 and older. By 2050, that's supposed to double to 16%. And in Japan, this problem is the most pressing. That's where the population is aging the fastest. Currently, about a quarter of the population in Japan is 65 and older, and by 2050, that number is supposed to be 1/3. If you think about it, that's staggering. It's 1 out of 3 people will be 65 and older in Japan in 2050. So it's critical that we find solutions also to the shortage, the caregiver shortage. So we're working on the goal is to make robotic capabilities that can support older adults aging in place longer, taking care of tasks they don't want to do anymore or can no longer perform, and also alleviating some of the sort of day-to-day tasks that caregivers need to take care of, so alleviating the chore-like tasks so that they can focus on the human-to-human interactions that really make caregiving what it is. So that's our main goal as a UX team here. And user experience as a field has become a lot more prevalent in tech companies over the years. It took a little while for companies to really understand that UX was a critical part of creating a successful product. And it's been similarly slow now with robotics as more and more robotics companies crop up. Some of them have user experience teams, a lot of them don't. I think hardware is obviously very challenging and takes longer than software in terms of development process, but it's really critical that we have UX in the workflow from the very beginning, because you can spend a whole lot of time creating a hardware solution and then you get to the point where you realize you were solving the wrong problem or a problem that doesn't even exist, and then you're really sort of in trouble. So I'm going to walk you through some of the methodologies we use to combine user experience with robotics. What you probably have heard of is just interviews and focus groups, so we do those. Those are pretty standard in UX. We also do participatory design sessions, which is when you work with your target population, in our case older adults, to come up with solutions together. So you're not just, doing the research and then going back to your office and coming up with a solution. You're actually sitting down with an older adult and designing something together and co-creating it. Another really valuable methodology we use is called contextual inquiry, which is when you follow someone around and observe them doing a task that you want to learn more about without really interrupting, just sort of asking questions so that you understand the process. And in our case, we wanted to understand the grocery shopping process for older adults. So we followed them, we met them at their house, followed them in their car to the grocery store, did the whole loop around the store, came home, watched them bring the groceries in, put them away, and it was very illuminating. You can see on the bottom there's one kitchen that we saw, which has pretty much no mess in it. It's pretty sparse, a lot of cabinetry, really spacious. And then compared to the kitchen above, it was a very small little apartment with items stacked on the walls, and the cabinets were very full. So it's important for us as designers to understand the workspace that our robots will be functioning in, but also very important for the engineers to see what sort of dynamic environment their robot needs to be successful in. You can also see the white cabinetry is pretty reflective, which can cause problems for certain sensors on robots. So this is all really important information to bring back to the engineering teams. And we try to bring at least one engineer with us when we do these visits so that it's not just us sort of regurgitating what we saw, but really bringing them along for the ride. Another valuable insight we got was the image with the fridge. So we opened the fridge and noticed that the woman we were chatting with had kept all of her items at the very edge of the shelves. And when we asked her why that was, she said, "Oh yeah, I just can't bend over and reach in." And it's not something that I would have asked about, how far back do you put your items on the shelf? But by being there and really observing it firsthand, we're able to understand that that's one of the problems that comes up a lot, and that turned out to be a really big trend. Being able to stoop safely and without pain is something that is challenging for a lot of older adults, which is sort of common sense, but it helps to see this in the context of people's lives over and over again. It really drives it home. Finally, we do a lot of home walkthroughs, which are probably my favorite. We find people who are pretty open to sharing their lives, which not everyone is, but we meet them at their home and we go into every single room in their home and talk about the tasks that they do in their home, the challenges that they face, and the goal there is to figure out if there are any things that we can create solutions for to help them. This, again, is really good for context setting for us. There's one, I apologize that it's so small, but there's a person, she wheeled an office chair onto her little patio, and she weatherproofed it with plastic bags. And whenever she needs to reach the hose that's on the ground to water the plants, she sits on the chair, lowers herself down, reaches for the hose, raises herself back up, and does it that way. And that's not ever something I would have thought to ask about, how do you reach the hose on the floor? But by being there with her, we got to witness the trouble she goes through, right? To do something as what I would consider simple as picking up a hose. It can be a real challenge for some people. She also is the owner of the closet next to her, and she said that anything about shoulder height she just pretty much considers lost, and she doesn't ever expect to get to it again. Yeah. So you really learn about the challenges very viscerally that people face. And then finally, I really like the dishwasher down below. This was another participant who doesn't generate enough dirty dishes to need to run the dishwasher, so she stores her plastic bags and her plastic containers up there. And again, she doesn't use the lower rack because that's too far down. So we learned a lot about the importance of designing robots that can reach areas that older adults are not able to, or people with different physical abilities. So these are some of the methodologies that I think are really critical in getting on the right track to making a robot that actually solves real problems. You can get pretty far with interviews, but the data is just much richer when you can actually follow people around. Whenever I have a captive audience, I like to make a plug for getting more diverse folks into robotics. Robots are going to be everywhere in our homes, all over. We're going to be riding around in them. And if robots are not designed by a very diverse group of people, they're not going to serve people equally and fairly. And we're at the point now in robotics where it's really starting to pick up. And if we don't have diverse designers working on these challenges now, it's going to take a really long time to catch up in the future. So there's a niche for everyone really in robotics. You can come at it from the law perspective, mechanical, software, electrical engineering, design, psychology. There's so many ways that you can contribute to the robotics field. And if you're thinking about making a change, I really encourage you to consider the robotics field and just getting involved. It's a really exciting time to be a part of this industry. And that's all I got.